Hello and welcome. Hope everyone's doing alright. I'm doing absolutely great, although I have seen the highest highs and the lowest lows this past week, gardening wise that is. But before we get into all that, if you could just settle a, how should we say this, minor disagreement, a slight difference of opinion between me and the wife. Apart from the clothesline, the houses in the background, the bit of fencing at the back and my little odds and sods you've got around, does anything in this frame offend you? Do you find it offensive to the eyes? I'll let you have 3 seconds to have a quick good study of it. No? That's what I thought. So you're not offended by the wires I've put up. What wires, I hear you say? Why, the one that runs from the Lonicera fence post over there on the right at the end of the pergola all the way over to the fern fence post over here. You can probably just see it in front of that banana leaf there. If we'll start walking over there and I'll explain the method to the madness. So yeah, the highest highs are, we'll have a quick flash of it now, but I finished that corner with the trellis and that. The lowest of the lows relates to this wire actually. So if we come over now, I've said before, I'm not particularly from a gardening background as such. I've always been interested, but I've got maybe a slightly more than the man on the street knowledge of gardening, if you see what I mean. So I'm no expert. But what I do like to do is I like to watch and observe things. And I've been watching this giant honeysuckle very much every day in the morning and the evening just to see what's going on. And I expect this is basic knowledge for most people, but the thing I've sort of gathered from all of this is that this honeysuckle seems to have two instincts in life. One of it is to go up and the other is to twine. Now what it is that I want to train this giant honeysuckle all the way across the front of this pergola here, and then when I've got the struts coming off the house towards the back there, what I want to do is have like the main trunk, if you want to call it that, running across this pergola, either on the front of it on some wires or it wrapping itself around it like a big boa constrictor, and then the offshoots train them up over the pergola on some wires, so that as you walk out into this patio area you'll have these big giant honeysuckle flowers sort of hanging down and it acting as like a little sort of living room, if that makes sense. And the reason I want to do it like that is that if we ever get an extension done and come out of the kitchen, because our kitchen is absolutely tiny, so we might do at some point, no rush just yet, but if we do, we're probably going to come out about as far as the dark grey patios, the original patio stones you can see down there. And what that means that if I've got the original trunk or the main trunk running across the front of this pergola, I can just run down the line on the back of it with, like, chop off all the offshoots that are going over there and keep the main trunk of it and then build the extension and not affect anything. That's why nothing in that area that's got all this on is going to be sort of permanent, if you like. I know building a flower bed out of blocks is sort of permanent, but it's not. A sledgehammer, that's all gone in 10 minutes. So yeah, but that's the theory of it. So I'm getting into a bit of experimentation with it, and like I said, to me this thing's got two instincts, which is to twine or to just go straight up vertical. Now that's obviously to do with where they're from. So what I wanted to do is just test what's going to be the best way for me to train it along this main face of the pergola. So there's going to be two ways essentially, which is one, like the big one we can see there, which is it's going to wrap itself around it like a big boa constrictor, like a big snake just wrapping itself around like a corkscrew. Or on the front of this, I'm going to have to put 1 or 2 wires and run them across horizontally so that it can just twine around it. So we've got our little experiment going on here. So this growing point, I snapped it off when I was putting that bit of the pergola in, and it's split into 3, as you can see there. So what the plan is that this one that's here on the right, you can see I've just got it up onto the pergola with a couple of rough wires there. Obviously, when it actually catches on, I'll just chop those wires out and just leave it hanging. So what I want to see with this is the two instincts with this is to twine and to go up. So I want to see with this long stem now that we can do just going off into oblivion there, if I leave that long enough and it sags down lower than that pergola, will it then come back towards us, climb up it over in the corner and then grow really long up and grow, then fall down, come over this bit, wrap itself up around, and kind of will it grow willingly like that? The other ones I've got is these two wires here. So we've got this one coming over my head here, you see, on the 45. Hang on, I'll get a better angle, so I didn't really size this up before, but we can see this one coming across to this fence post, and then we've got one that runs from that fence post all the way across all the bananas to the fern fence post. So I've got two more growing points left. So what it was that one on the left was, and this is where I've hit the lowest lows of gardening, because that one on the left was as long as that one on the right. It was actually wrapped around and nearly touching the fence at the back. So I sacrificed it being able to get hold of that trellis at the back for my experiment. And then what I wanted to do is this one sort of towards us, if that makes sense, and this the center one of the three, that wasn't as high as it was now a few days ago, and what I wanted to do is see that if I put a wire on top of it and it sensed it, would it hit it, realize it's there, and then wrap itself around willingly? Or is it something whereby I've had to do with the other ones where you let them grow on and on and on, and now that one's, you know, 6 inches above, I could wrap it around the thing a couple of times, then let it grow up and up and up another 6 to 8 inches, then wrap that bit around and then do it manually, if that makes sense? Or will it sort of do it itself? And going on from that, this one here on the left, it was going to be like that until I snapped the end off it. I snapped probably about a foot off it. I was going to be able to pull that up and actually pre-wrap it round already, and then just see if that would grow across here anyway. So yeah, the wife's offended that I've put this massive wire going across. Admittedly, I didn't want to push the thing, but thinking onwards about my wanting to make this like a little archway, so it looks like a little secluded bit you have to walk into to see the waterfall and the pines and all that sort of thing when the time comes. That's what the idea of the bananas was. They're almost done. I reckon next year the leaves will touch, and basically from the top of the washing line up you won't be able to see because all the leaves will be touching. The ferns in the bottom will be sort of encroaching over the wall and over the plants, so it'll be like a little secluded sort of open space in there. But yeah, the second part that I haven't said to the missus is that if that honeysuckle hits that wire and runs across there and buds out, that could be seen as a way of getting evergreen cover across it to make that arch permanent, you know what I mean? So yeah, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I'll wait for her to cool down a little bit. I don't know why she got a funny head on. It might have just you know, she might have just been tired, shall we say. So yeah, so that's something for me to keep an eye on and us to keep an eye on of what goes on. It's a bit annoying because we've only probably got a week or two of mild weather, and hasn't it been very mild? 23 degrees yesterday it was in this garden. So for the middle of October, that's pretty good or bad depending on what way you look at it. So I'm going to leave that as it is now and just sort of see what happens with it. I might take that little practice strut on top of the pergola off just so that doesn't interrupt with it, and this straggly leaf that's directly on top of this honeysuckle here, the center one, I might just cut that one down. I wouldn't cut it down normally, but just so it doesn't interfere with the experiment, and hopefully over the next 2 or 3 weeks we can sort of have an inkling, and if this one just stops growing and it starts shooting out further down, I'll know that it's going to need some wires to run across there. And if I'm going to run some wires, do I just make it touch it and it'll run across, or do I need to let it grow up a couple of foot, wrap it round, let it grow up a couple of foot, wrap it round manually? Either or, we'll get there in the end. So yeah, otherwise it's all looking good. You can see I've been doing a bit of trimming there and a bit of moving around, but that's the lowest of lows. I snapped that bit off the end of that and I was absolutely wounded for at least, I don't know, 25 minutes. I was in a bit of a strop with myself. If I'd have had one of those belts that the monk has on Angels and Demons or the Da Vinci Code, and he chastised himself with that spiky belt thing, I would have done it. But yeah, I didn't have one to hand, unfortunately. So if we move over here to the highest of highs, what I just wanted to point out on this section is that you see I haven't quite finished that fence behind the tetrapanics yet, and you can sort of see the grey horrible fence that's over in this corner that will be covered by a waterfall. But you can see the sort of, if you ignore the house behind it, you can sort of, if it's like that, it kind of reminds me that there's a boundary there, that there's a neighbour there, that I'm in an urban environment just because I can see that fence behind. So I had a massive smile ear to ear on my face when I'd finished this lot, because you can see it's all finished and it is all good. I'm really happy with it. It looks good. It's got plenty of you know, space for me to get to like do stuff with it. I could run some wires down vertically on top of it if I wanted to make some vertical bits up. I can train climbers up through it. And it looks quite good even in its own right. So really happy with that. And you can see I've put that top layer of fencing on that back fence as opposed to this one here where you can see the grey fence behind it. And you know, if we look from here you know, it just, there's no defined boundary. There could be a masses of fields and nothing. If you couldn't hear the motorway, which is about half a mile away over that way so if you couldn't hear it and you couldn't see that, then yeah, you could just sort of get lost in here. But that'll be for another day when we've got plenty more plants. But for now, yeah, I'm really happy with that. It's coming along pretty well. So all I'm going to do, the reason I've left this top bit of fence off is because I've got my armoured light cable over there. You can see just to the right of the barbecue, not the one down on the floor, the one led up against the fence. So I need to pull that up behind here, get an outside light, wire it in. Then I can put that last bit of fencing on the top, and then I can finish this trellis in, and then that is done, dusted, ready for my Clematis armandii. And what I was thinking is I'm going to let the cannas, we'll go and look at the cannas actually, because they're still flowering and they're relatively interesting to people who are interested. And if you're watching this, I take it you're somewhat interested. So this is Canna iridifolia or iridifloria e hemini. They're absolute beasts. Can you see that stalk right in the center there? I mean, I'm just going to take my eye off the camera a minute, but I'd say that's probably a good 7 foot, maybe 7.5 foot to the top of the flower stalk. I don't deadhead these or do anything like that. I should do really, but you can see they're all growing quite nice. This is mainly a foliage one. If we come down here, you can see it. If it doesn't get destroyed, then it looks quite good. I chopped all this out so I could actually sit there and just get a feel for what it's like to be in amongst all the bushes. So I'll wait for the first frost to take them, and then I'm going to dig them up, and I may actually put half of it down here where the Schefflera rhodendiflora is that I killed, just where that sort of plant pot on the trowel is down there, maybe somewhere in and around there. And then the 3 deciduous ferns that we can't see, which are under the tetrapanax leaves, they'll all be coming out. Clematis armandii in there, and then that edging is where the barbecue is. That's all going to be one big rock waterfall all the way wrapping itself around the corner. So I might need something to blur the edges of that, in which case the other half of that canna might do well over there. But that's something for me to crack on with. Otherwise, coming on around here, everything's doing all right really. It looks nice. It looks nice and enclosed. I still like, just, you know, it's finished, this corner now essentially. I've got a bit of supplementary planting to do, a few flowers, maybe put in a few new ferns, but until I buy them, and I've got nothing particularly in mind at the moment, I've got more important things to do. So yeah, we'll just sort of leave this corner and let it all grow. So we've got an update on the scale insects on this fig tree. If you're interested, there are still scale insects on it, as you can see, quite a lot. They don't seem to have transferred over to the fatsias. So you can see the fatsias started flowering, so that's good. That'll bring in hopefully some bugs that like that, and also like insects or their larvae do, and they'll come in for a nice little bite to eat in there or a drink, and then they'll go, hang on a minute, who told me about all this free food that's on this fig tree? And then yeah, hopefully those scale insects will just wake up one day and they'll all be gone. In other interesting news, I just wanted to show you the frond on this cyathea that's just coming up. So you can see this one that's coming up now. Sorry, I just walked straight through a spider's web, but can you see it's kind of mutated off there? And it's kind of like got 2, so I wonder if that's going to do the crispum thing where it splits at the end. I mean, that's not the end of the frond, that's the beginning of the frond. The only other thing that's worth noting is that we'll go into it more next time, but when I was jamming this bit of wood in for the pergola at this side, I did drop that wood the first time round, and it actually landed and done in one of the Dicksonia croziers, which I'll show you. This new one's just coming out now, as you can see. but I wonder if the other end of that bit of wood at there fell and hit that crazier and like caused a rupture in it or something like that. But yeah, we'll see what it comes out like that. It's probably going to be another month or so before it comes out. So yeah, that's all good. With regard to my next plan, or what I'm going to do in the garden, I've half tidied up this corner, got all the rubbish out of it. I've got all my pipes coming out through there, which is sleeving right down in the back corner. If you can see them, there's 9 there. So I'm going to run I've got my pipe for my heating, over soil heating, that I'm going to run out. A lot of it's already done. So for example, under that blue plate at the back right, at the back top right, is 2 pipes. They actually run under all of this, and if I come up here you can see them just down there, the 2 white pipes. So all I need to do is just get that small microbore pipe that we just seen coiled up, coil it around this cyathea, and then that will give me a little bit of heat there. And likewise over this side of the garden, you can see the 2 pipes that are coming under the seat there with blue and orange on them. They all run around there and in through this drain pipe, and then they stick their head out there. So I just need to run a bit of pipe across the back over to there, connect the 2 circuits up, and then run it into the boiler and whatnot inside the house, and we'll have a little good experiment with the heating. So that's my next thing to do out here, because I think the frosts are due. Well, we got 4 or 5 degree temperatures due in about 10 days time, so I need to get that done and rigged up this weekend, just so that if the worst happens I can just flick a switch and turn it on, at least in the meantime, before I start getting sensors and whatnot involved. Next video will probably be the pergola. You can see I've been making progress on it. I just need to do a few more bits on it before it sort of reached the next stage where we're getting into putting in these struts across the house. So yeah, that's it really. Hope you're all enjoying this balmy weather. I think the ferns are absolutely loving it. Wet and mild, can't get much better than that. Yeah, I think that's about it. We will keep an eye on that giant honeysuckle, see what happens with the experiment, and hopefully the wife will let me keep this wire up long enough to find out which is going to win out, verticalness or twininess. I'm going to say verticalness if I was a betting man. So yeah, there you go. Anyway, have a good day. See you next time.